Deshaun, a 14-year-old boy, walked home from school as the sun set behind the city skyline. He had just finished his shift at the local grocery store, where he worked part-time to help his mother with expenses. Life hadn't been easy for them since his father passed away, but Deshaun believed in hard work and kindness. As he walked through the quieter streets, he heard a faint cry coming from a nearby alley. His heart pounded as he rushed toward the sound. There, he found a pregnant woman, clutching her stomach in pain. Her face was pale, and she struggled to breathe. "Ma'am, are you okay?" he asked, kneeling beside her. The woman, Amelia, looked up at him, her eyes filled with fear. I think I'm going into labor," she whispered. Without hesitation, Deshaun pulled out his old phone and dialed 911. But as he waited for help, he noticed her breathing becoming more erratic. He knew he couldn't just stand there. "Don't worry, help is coming," he assured her, trying to keep her calm. Little did he know, the woman he was helping was the wife of one of the richest men in the city, Daniel Kingston. And this act of kindness was about to change his life forever. Deshaun knelt beside Amelia, gripping her trembling hand as she gasped for breath. He could see the panic in her eyes, and he knew they couldn't just wait for an ambulance. "Ma'am, we need to get you to the hospital now," he said firmly. Amelia tried to respond, but another sharp contraction made her cry out in pain. Looking around, Deshaun spotted a man getting into a cab at the end of the street. Summoning all his courage, he sprinted toward the car. "Sir, please wait. We need help," he shouted. The driver hesitated but saw the urgency in Deshaun's eyes. Without wasting time, Deshaun helped Amelia into the back seat and gave the driver the nearest hospital's address. As the cab sped through the streets, Amelia's breathing grew more labored. "My husband, Daniel Kingston, please call him," she gasped. Deshaun's eyes widened. Daniel Kingston? The billionaire? He had seen the man on TV before, but he never imagined he would be sitting next to his wife in an emergency. "I don't have his number," Deshaun admitted, worried. Amelia fumbled with her phone but was too weak to hold it. Deshaun quickly picked it up and scrolled through her recent calls. Finding Daniel's number, he hit dial. After 2 rings, a deep voice answered. "Amelia, what's wrong?" "Sir, my name is Deshaun. Your wife is in labor and I'm taking her to the hospital." There was a pause, then Daniel's voice became sharp. "Where are you?" Deshaun quickly gave him the details. As they approached the hospital, he could hear the fear in Daniel's voice. "Stay with her, I'm on my way." The car screeched to a stop outside the emergency entrance. Deshaun jumped out, calling for help as hospital staff rushed to Amelia's side. Just as she was being wheeled in, Amelia squeezed Deshaun's hand. "Thank you for not leaving me." Little did he know, this was only the beginning of something much bigger. Deshaun paced outside the emergency room, his heart pounding as he replayed everything that had just happened. The hospital staff had quickly taken Amelia inside, and now he was left waiting, uncertain if he should stay or leave. The sound of screeching tires outside made him turn his head. A sleek black SUV pulled up, and within seconds, a tall, well-dressed man stepped out. Daniel Kingston. Deshaun had only seen him on TV before, powerful, confident, and always in control. But right now, the man looked frantic, his sharp blue eyes scanning the hospital entrance until they landed on Deshaun. "You! Where is she?" Daniel demanded, walking up to him. Deshaun pointed toward the emergency room doors. "They took her in a few minutes ago. She was in a lot of pain." Daniel exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "And you're the one who helped her?" His voice was tense, but there was something else beneath it, something like gratitude. "Yes, sir," Deshaun said. "She was in trouble. I couldn't just leave her." For a moment, Daniel just looked at him as if assessing the young man before him. Then, to Deshaun's surprise, the billionaire extended his hand. "Thank you," Daniel said, his voice firm. Deshaun hesitated before shaking his hand. "I just did what anyone would do." Daniel scoffed slightly, shaking his head. "You'd be surprised how many people would have just walked away." He turned toward the emergency doors, then looked back at Deshaun. "Come inside with me." Deshaun blinked in surprise. "Me?" "Yes," Daniel said. "You didn't just help my wife, you saved my family. I need to know exactly what happened." Deshaun nodded slowly and followed him inside. He had no idea that this moment would change his life forever. Deshaun followed Daniel Kingston into the hospital, feeling out of place next to the billionaire. The emergency room was filled with nurses and doctors rushing around, but Daniel walked through with purpose, his expensive shoes clicking against the tile floor. As they reached the waiting area, a doctor approached them. "Mr. Kingston?" the doctor asked. "Yes," Daniel said quickly. "How's my wife and the baby?" The doctor gave a reassuring nod. "Your wife is stable. The baby is safe for now, but the stress she experienced could have triggered premature labor. We'll need to keep her under observation for the next 24 hours." Daniel exhaled deeply, relief washing over his face. But then he turned to Deshawn. "This young man is the reason she made it here in time," Daniel told the doctor. "If it weren't for him, I might have lost them both." The doctor turned to Deshawn with a kind smile. "You did a great thing, son." Deshawn shifted awkwardly. I just did what I could." Daniel placed a hand on Deshawn's shoulder, his expression serious. "No, you did more than that. You saved my family." For the first time, Deshawn saw something in Daniel's eyes, something more than just gratitude. It was respect. "Come with me," Daniel said, leading him toward a quieter area of the hospital. Deshawn followed, unsure of what was happening. Once they were alone, Daniel turned to face him. "I don't know what your situation is, but I can tell you're not just some ordinary kid," Daniel said. "Tell me, Deshawn, what do you want?" Deshawn blinked in confusion. "What do you mean?" Daniel leaned in slightly. "You saved my wife and my unborn child. That's not something I take lightly. So, if there's anything you need, anything at all, just say it. Money, a job, an opportunity, I can make it happen." Deshawn hesitated. He had never been offered anything like this before. His entire life, he had struggled just to get by. But now, standing in front of one of the richest men in the city, he had a chance to ask for something real, something life-changing. But what should he ask for? Deshawn looked down at his worn-out sneakers, his mind racing. He could ask for anything: money, a car, a house for his mother, but none of those things felt right. He glanced up at Daniel, whose sharp blue eyes studied him carefully. "Come on, son," Daniel urged. "Anything. Just name it." Deshawn took a deep breath. I don't want money." Daniel raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "No?" Deshawn shook his head. "I mean, don't get me wrong. I could use it, but that's not what I really want." Daniel folded his arms. "Then what do you want?" Deshawn hesitated for only a moment before speaking. "A chance." Daniel frowned slightly. "A chance? A chance at what?" "A chance to prove myself," Deshawn said firmly. "I don't want a handout. I want an opportunity to work, to learn, to do something that actually matters." For a long moment, Daniel didn't say anything. Then suddenly he smiled, a rare, genuine smile. "That's not what I expected," Daniel admitted. "Most people would have asked for cash or a new car." "I'm not most people," Deshawn said simply. Daniel chuckled. "No, you're not." He ran a hand through his neatly combed hair as if thinking. Then he nodded. "All right, Deshawn," Daniel said. "You want an opportunity? I'll give you one." Deshawn's heart pounded. Was this really happening? Daniel pulled out his phone and typed something quickly. A few seconds later, he looked up. "I just sent a message to the head of my company's internship program," Daniel said. "Tomorrow morning, you'll have a meeting at Kingston Enterprises. If you impress them, you'll get a paid internship." Deshawn's eyes widened. "A real internship? At Kingston Enterprises?" Daniel nodded. "You'll start at the bottom, but if you work hard, you'll move up, just like I did." Deshawn could hardly believe it. An opportunity like this didn't come to kids like him. "Thank you, sir," he said sincerely. Daniel extended his hand. "No, thank you, Deshawn." As they shook hands, Deshawn realized something. His life was about to change forever. The next morning, Deshawn woke up earlier than he ever had. He put on the best outfit he owned, a clean button-down shirt and a pair of khakis his mother had bought him for church. He didn't have dress shoes, so he made sure his sneakers were spotless. Standing in front of the bathroom mirror, he took a deep breath. "This is it," he whispered to himself. His mother, Gloria, stood by the door as he stepped out of their small apartment. Her eyes were filled with pride and worry. "You got this, baby," she said, squeezing his hand. Deshawn nodded and hurried off to catch the bus. A different world. When he arrived at Kingston Enterprises, his nerves skyrocketed. The towering glass building was unlike anything he'd ever seen up close. People in sharp suits walked in and out, moving with purpose. Taking a deep breath, Deshawn stepped inside. The lobby was sleek, polished and filled with important-looking people. He felt out of place, but he refused to let it show. At the reception desk, a woman glanced at him skeptically. "Can I help you?" "I have an appointment," he said, straightening his shoulders. "Deshaun Johnson, internship interview." She looked through her computer before nodding. "Mr. Kingston's assistant will be down shortly." A few minutes later, a tall man in a tailored suit approached. "Deshaun Johnson?" "Yes, sir. Follow me." As they walked through the office, Deshaun took everything in: rows of cubicles, massive conference rooms, and walls filled with awards. This was a world he never imagined he'd be a part of. Finally, they stopped outside a large office. The assistant knocked, then opened the door. "Mr. Kingston, your candidate is here." Deshaun's heart pounded as he stepped inside. Sitting behind the desk wasn't just any hiring manager. It was Daniel Kingston himself. "Welcome to your future, Deshaun," Daniel said with a smirk. Deshaun swallowed hard. This was going to be bigger than he ever imagined. Deshaun sat across from Daniel Kingston, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. The office was grand, with a massive window overlooking the city skyline. It was intimidating, but Deshaun reminded himself why he was here. Daniel leaned forward, studying him. "Tell me, Deshaun, why do you want this internship?" Deshaun took a deep breath. "Because I want to change my future," he said confidently. "I know I don't have the experience or the background most people here do, but I learn fast and I work hard. I won't waste this opportunity." Daniel nodded, impressed by his honesty. "That's a good answer," he said. "But let's talk about something more important: character." Deshaun stiffened. He wasn't sure where this was going. "I looked into you," Daniel continued. "I know you saved my wife's life. You could have asked for anything, but you chose an opportunity instead of a handout. That tells me a lot about the kind of person you are." Deshaun swallowed hard. "I just want to earn my place, sir." Daniel leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. "That's exactly why I like you." A test of skill. Daniel reached for a folder and slid it across the desk. "I'm going to give you a challenge. This company doesn't just need people who can follow orders. We need problem solvers. Open it." Deshaun hesitated, then flipped open the folder. Inside was a business proposal full of numbers and details he didn't quite understand. "This is a real problem we're facing," Daniel explained. "I want you to take this home, go over it, and come back with your thoughts tomorrow. No pressure. Just show me how you think." Deshaun nodded. "I'll do my best." As he left the office, his mind raced. He had never worked on something like this before, but he refused to back down. This was his chance, and he was ready to prove himself. Deshaun sat at the small kitchen table in his apartment, staring at the business proposal. The words on the page blurred together, the financial jargon making little sense. He had never dealt with anything like this before. He ran a hand over his face and took a deep breath. "I can figure this out," he muttered. Determined, he grabbed his laptop and began researching. He watched videos, read articles, and took notes. Hours passed, and frustration crept in. The weight of this opportunity pressed on his shoulders. He couldn't afford to fail. Just as he was about to give up, a thought struck him. What if he looked at it differently? Instead of focusing on the complex numbers, he thought about the problem like a real-life situation. "What would Mr. Kingston do?" he whispered. He broke the problem down into simple terms, using real-world examples. He thought about how small businesses in his neighborhood survived, how they attracted customers, and how they managed costs. Slowly, the pieces started coming together. By sunrise, he had filled pages with notes and ideas. He was exhausted, but for the first time he felt confident. Facing the challenge. The next morning, Deshaun walked into Kingston Enterprises with his heart pounding. As he stepped into Daniel's office, he saw the billionaire waiting, a curious expression on his face. "So," Daniel said, leaning back in his chair, "what did you come up with?" Deshaun swallowed his nerves and began explaining his ideas. He spoke about simplifying costs, targeting the right customers, and using community outreach to build trust. Daniel listened intently, nodding occasionally. When Deshaun finished, there was a long silence. Finally, Daniel smiled. "You think like a businessman, Deshaun." Deshaun's eyes widened. "Does that mean?" Daniel stood up. "It means you're not just getting an internship. You're about to learn everything I know about business." Deshaun could hardly believe it. This was more than he ever expected. He had stepped into this challenge unsure of himself, but now he was walking into a future filled with possibilities. Deshaun could hardly contain his excitement. He had just secured the opportunity of a lifetime, learning directly from one of the most successful businessmen in the country. But as he walked out of Daniel Kingston's office, the reality hit him. This wouldn't be easy. He had no formal business education, no experience in high-stakes meetings, no connections in the corporate world. He was just a kid from a struggling neighborhood. But he had something more valuable: determination. As he walked through the hallways of Kingston Enterprises, employees glanced at him curiously. He wasn't dressed in a tailored suit like them. He wasn't a wealthy investor. He was an outsider, and they knew it. Can I really do this, he thought. But then he remembered why he started. He wasn't doing this just for himself. He was doing it for his mother, for the kids back home who needed hope, for the people who had always been told they weren't good enough. The first lesson. The next morning, Deshaun arrived at the office early. Daniel was already waiting for him in the conference room. A massive screen displayed charts, numbers, and reports. "All right, Deshaun," Daniel said. "Lesson 1, business isn't about money, it's about people." Deshaun frowned. "I thought businesses were all about making money." Daniel chuckled. "That's what most people think, but real success comes from understanding people. Their needs, their struggles, their desires. If you learn that, you can build anything." Deshaun listened carefully as Daniel explained how the best companies didn't just sell products, they solved problems. By the end of the session, Deshaun's mind was racing. He had never thought about business like this before, and for the first time, he truly believed he belonged here. Deshaun knew he had a long road ahead. Daniel Kingston had given him a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but now it was up to him to prove he deserved it. His first challenge came sooner than expected. Daniel invited him to sit in on a high-level meeting with executives. It was a strategy session for expanding Kingston Enterprises into new markets. Deshaun sat quietly, listening as the professionals debated numbers, trends, and projections. But something felt off. The executives were focused solely on profits, discussing potential cities based on wealth rather than need. Deshaun, remembering Daniel's lesson about understanding people, hesitated before raising his hand. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady but nervous. "Have you considered opening locations in underserved areas?" The room fell silent. A few executives exchanged glances, clearly unimpressed. One of them, a middle-aged man in a crisp navy suit, scoffed. "We focus on profitability. Those areas don't have enough spending power." Deshaun refused to back down. "But what if you created affordable options for people in those communities? You'd build loyalty, word of mouth, and long-term success. You're thinking about quick profits, but this could be something bigger." Daniel leaned back in his chair, a smile forming on his face. The executives, however, weren't convinced. They quickly moved on, dismissing Deshaun's idea as naive. But Daniel wasn't dismissing it. A private conversation after the meeting, Daniel pulled Deshaun aside. "You're thinking like a leader," he said. "They may not see it yet, but I do. Keep pushing." For the first time, Deshaun felt something shift inside him. He wasn't just some kid who got lucky. He was someone with ideas that could change lives. And he wasn't going to stop now. Deshaun left the meeting with a fire burning inside him. He had spoken up, challenged the status quo, and although the executives dismissed him, Daniel Kingston had listened. That alone gave him hope. But hope wasn't enough. He needed action. Determined to prove himself, Deshaun spent the next few days researching. He studied business models, consumer behavior, and the economic impact of investing in underserved communities. He collected statistics, success stories, and real-world examples of companies that had thrived by doing exactly what he had suggested. A bold proposal. One evening, Daniel called him into his office. "You've been quiet. What's on your mind?" Deshaun took a deep breath and placed a thick folder on Daniel's desk. "This." Daniel raised an eyebrow as he flipped through the pages. It was a detailed proposal, one that outlined how Kingston Enterprises could enter new markets while also making a difference. Deshaun had even included a plan for a pilot program, one store in an underserved neighborhood with affordable products, job opportunities for locals, and community engagement initiatives. "This is impressive," Daniel said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. But you know the executives won't go for it. Deshaun stood firm. Then let's prove them wrong. A surprising response. Daniel sat back, tapping his fingers on the desk. You remind me of myself when I was younger, he said. Ambitious, stubborn, willing to take risks. He closed the folder and looked Deshaun in the eye. All right, let's do it. One location, but if it fails, the discussion ends there. Deshaun's heart pounded. He had convinced a billionaire to take a chance on his idea. This wasn't just an opportunity anymore. This was his moment to make a difference. The day had finally arrived. The first Kingston Enterprises store in an underserved neighborhood was opening. Deshaun stood outside, watching as people gathered, curiosity and excitement in their eyes. This wasn't just another business venture. It was a lifeline for a community that had been overlooked for too long. Daniel Kingston arrived, shaking Deshaun's hand. You made this happen, he said. Deshaun shook his head. We made this happen. A community transformed. The store was unlike anything the neighborhood had seen before. Fresh produce at fair prices, job opportunities for locals, and even a small section dedicated to community events. Deshaun had ensured that this was more than a business. It was a place where people felt valued. As he walked through the aisles, he saw an elderly woman tear up as she picked up fresh fruit she could finally afford. A young father proudly walked his daughter through the store, saying, "This is for us." Daniel pulled Deshaun aside. Look around. You've done something incredible. Deshaun smiled. This is just the beginning. The ultimate reward. A week later, Daniel made an announcement. Because of Deshaun's vision and dedication, we're expanding this initiative. 10 more stores, more jobs, and a long-term commitment to communities in need. Deshaun couldn't believe it. His dream had become a movement. As he stood in front of the crowd, he realized something. He never asked for money, power, or status. All he wanted was change. And now, he had made it happen. If you were inspired by Deshaun's story, remember, one act of kindness can create a ripple effect of change. Share this story to remind others that giving back is the greatest reward. Comment below on how you'd use your success to help others. Let's build a world where we lift each other up. Follow for more powerful stories.